Can we talk a little bit about countries that took the pledge? There are countries who did have active nuclear weapons programs, some above board, some less so, who were persuaded to give them up. Now, obviously, the South Africans, it was a fact that white people didn't want to leave them to black people. But you have the Swedes, you've got the Brazilians and the Argentines. Talk a little bit, any of you, jump all here, about why these countries decided to give them up, what pressure, what incentives were given, and whether any of that is applicable right now to a country like Iran. Anybody want to?
I can tell you about the Swedes because I interviewed several Swedish scientists who worked on their bomb program. And I asked them, why did you give it up? They were moving toward building tactical nuclear weapons with the idea of deterring Soviet forces from entering their country. And when the Soviets developed hydrogen weapons and the Swedes realized that it would take maybe 2 to wipe out the entire country, they realized their tactical nukes were of no value and indeed were a danger to them. So they gave it up in the context of the NPT in 1968, having learned a very valuable lesson, which they then applied in 90 and 91 when South Africa was going through this discussion. As the scientist said to me, we knew all about this, so we could help convince the South Africans that this was a good idea. That's one example.
And the Brazilians and the Argentines?
Well, I mean, there you have a regional competition between two military-driven regimes who saw each other that the best defense is an offense here, and they started programs that got fairly well down the track before there were changes of government and wiser heads decided not to. And I think that's been the case in some other places. Oftentimes a larger power has to impress upon a country like Taiwan or South Korea to halt a program. But this is a question that probably has no final answer because there will still be countries that decide to go forward with them for reasons that counter all of the ones I just mentioned.
Brazilians and Argentinians, though, gave up their programs in the context of the end of the Cold War, specifically. It was in 1991 when this happened for them.
But they were also transitioning from military to
no doubt
civilian. Well, of
yeah.
course, it's been a long transition there. But you know, it does raise this very important question here, which is, it is true that the Russians and the Americans are not cutting their arsenals fast enough, certainly for the perception of living up to their NPT commitments. But you know, I personally, you know, I think it's an excuse for, you know, I don't think the Indians and the Pakistanis, you know, built up nuclear weapons because we had them. And I don't think that, you know, our failure to persuade them to give them up is because of our failure to move down and move toward a notional zero, which everyone knows we're never going to go to. Yeah. So is it just a question of you can't persuade them, but maybe you can persuade the rest of the world if we look like we're good guys? How much does it matter what we do in other countries, what are fundamentally, to my mind, security decisions?
Oh, I think it's absolutely central. The United States has always been the leader, for better and for worse, in the nuclear age, inventing the bomb, using it, really developing the strategic theories, also in the disarmament field, technically in almost every area. We have been the leader, and we can't put ourselves forward as the leader in the world and then suddenly turn around and say, who, us, when it comes to a nuclear disarmament. I don't think that's going to work. But the deeper point is that certainly it's probably true that the Indians did not say, oh, we have to defend ourselves against the United States, although they did notice it when the carrier Enterprise sailed into their waters in 1971, I think it was, during the India-Pakistan war of that time. And they cite it rather more often than you'd imagine. But what does matter is that the United States is at the center, and not with the sole responsibility, because there are 7 or 8 other nuclear powers, if you count North Korea, but of a network of threat and counter-threat that is global in character. So we threaten let's say China threatens India, India responds to China, Pakistan responds to India, and so forth. Those aren't the only things involved. There's also the prestige factor, the joining the club, as Mohammed al-Baradei said this morning, that the minor league wants to get into the major league, in part for domestic political reasons. But all of that, to me, is one single global apparatus. I don't mean to pin too much blame on the United States, but at the center of that sit the nuclear powers, and what they do matters totally for what other powers who may be interested in getting in this business will do. So it's in that broader context that what we do here in the United States, as I speak as an American, of course, seems to me to be absolutely key, along with what the other nuclear powers do.
Do you think it matters? I've been intrigued by things that have been going on in Asia. Certainly, there's been a lot of talk already this morning about the Rakashimura plant and plutonium separation plant. The Japanese are going to be separating 9 metric tons of plutonium a year for peaceful uses, and MOX plant, they say, to burn. We have the intriguing experience of the South Koreans, who just got a little bored on a Saturday night. The Xbox was broken, so they decided to use their lasers and enrich a little bit of uranium. Gets boring out there, If you look at our knowledge of the mixture of these nuclear programs, how much of this has been driven from the bottom up? I mean, are these scientists that are pushing it? Is it the military that's pushing it in some of these countries? Is it? I did always find it quite interesting that the South Koreans said that they didn't know about it. That this was not, that it didn't go high up. It did cost, quite a lot of money. Somebody seemed to be able to check the uranium out, but. How much do we see that these programs over the years have been driven in places like South Africa or Brazil, Argentina, or even the United States, have been driven by the scientists versus the policymakers?
I don't think so. I think in almost every instance, a big decision has to be taken on high. You're going to commit some amount of money. That's a question here. Is it cheap or is it expensive to get a nuclear bomb? And initially, I think it was quite expensive, and certainly in the US case, we did it in spades with everything. But, the South African case shows that it can be done sort of on the cheap. But nevertheless, it's still a commitment, mobilization of resources. There has to be, General Grove somewhere to put the scientists together with the engineers and get the material. So. I don't think it kind of creeps up from the bottom. You have to have some level of expertise at some level, or you're not going to do, Botswana's not going to get the bomb, I don't think.